destruction, that wasn't just random violence. That was designed to send a message. That was this dude's way of crashing all the way out. He's going to go out with a bang. He's going to martyr himself for the cause. Yeah. So these white supremacist males are really, really crashing out here. And you got to understand how these white supremacists think. They're conditioned to externalize blame. When something happens, they got to project the blame outward, even though it was their fellow white supremacist male, who many people are saying this guy was part of that whole Nick Fuentes groper stuff. So it's one of their own, but they're not going to admit that. They gotta find some kind of external enemy to project onto. You understand? So be it a religious thing, or Mormons, Jews, liberals, Antifa, they have to blame somebody other than their fellow white supremacist. Because see, admitting that it's one of their own, that disrupts the whole myth of moral and racial superiority. So they got to pivot to somebody else to blame. They tried to blame us, and that's so damn flimsy and stupid looking. But you understand the need for retaliation, that's a form of psychological control. See, in white supremacist ideology, retaliation is not just revenge, it's a ritual to kind of reestablish dominance. When a prominent figure like Charlie Kirk is killed or harmed, these extremists, they feel like their hierarchy is under attack. So retaliating, especially with violence, that's their way of basically emotionally getting their lick back and sending a message that they're still in control. And they have the white supremacists, man, they got a history of targeting innocent groups as stand-ins. See, historically, white supremacist violence, it's always been retaliatory and misdirected. Like whole black communities were burned down and destroyed after some individual crime. They have a whole history of doing that stuff. If they perceive that that group, like the Mormons, had some kind of symbolic or imagined ties to Charlie Kirk's downfall, then that group becomes the next target. And the white supremacists, they're real obsessed with loyalty and people breaking their code. See, white supremacists, they treat ideological loyalty as sacred. So if somebody on their side betrays the cause, or if they're perceived to have betrayed the cause, uh, they won't face introspection or accountability. Instead, the group turns outward and they attack others as a form of distraction and psychological compensation. So anybody seen celebrating or not mourning Kirk, that becomes fair game in their eyes. And these white supremacists, they see themselves as basically soldiers in a culture war. See, Charlie Kirk's followers, man, these people view themselves as foot soldiers in a racial and political holy war. So when their general gets struck down, they're trying to adopt this militant mindset. And that leads to them basically identifying enemies and stockpiling weapons and mentally protecting themselves and preparing for confrontation. Even if no evidence suggests there's a link between a perceived enemy and the original incident. It's their own. They're doing shit to themselves. Yeah. So it's very interesting how these white supremacists think. The mindset is real funny style. And I want to get deep about this. The problem is, family, with the white supremacists, man, they have the illusion of racial superiority, but there's been no consequences. When you let people do shit and you don't give them consequences, they implode on themselves, just like a kid. If you don't discipline a kid, you let a kid run amok. You tell a kid you can do no wrong, you can go around and run and just be as degenerate as possible, and you're not going to be accountable. Nothing is going to happen to you. That kid becomes a damn degenerate.